Still loading. All right. And there we are. We should be live now. So hello everyone. And I know most of you are probably wondering, well, where in the world is the DNA show that I came here for? And little secret for you. David is on vacation for the next 2 weeks. And I'm terrified of saying that, honestly, because everything seems to go wrong when the senior pastor is on vacation. So I guess I am pleading with you, if you have any thoughts of doing something that is dangerous to yourself or others, this is not the 2 weeks to do it. In fact, probably not even the year to do it. Let's hold off on any potentially dangerous decisions until at least 2021. Anyway, so I thought it would be fun since we don't have David around, and since David's always asking to learn more about me, that maybe I could take some time and with everybody who's watching to learn more about some of the other folks at St. Paul. So brought with me today, Dr. Sam Ritter. How's it going, man?
Hey, Aaron. Good. Just hanging in there.
Yeah. So I'm assuming you're wondering why I brought you here. Basically, I'm just going to ask some questions, to get to know a little bit more of your story. And I invite anyone who's watching. I'm watching the comments on Facebook. If you have something that you want to ask Sam, maybe we can hit those at the end. But I guess first things first. Tell us a little bit about your faith journey, Sam. Did you grow up in the church? Did you come to the faith later on in the life, or what was that like?
Yeah, I'm one of those that seems to have a pretty boring story. But I was raised by Christians. Both my parents became saved as adults, and then were saved before my brother and I were born. And so we were. Actually, this season of COVID is the first time I've known not going to church on Sundays. So, been really fortunate for that. We attended Baptist churches growing up, and I worked at my first few church jobs as music director and pianist were at Baptist churches. And then when I began my master's, then I worked at a Methodist church for the first time. It was a nice change.
Yeah.
To spend more time with Methodists. So I worked for 2 years there, and then now I'm here came for Jacobs, and I've been here for 4 years. I became a Christian pretty young. I don't remember the exact age, but it was before I was 10 years old. And I just remember my dad, took everything very seriously and made sure that all of the things we had been taking in church, we actually understood and weren't just spitting back information. And I think it was around age 10 or so, 8 or 10, sat down and really wanted to get baptized, but I need to make sure that I understood what was going on with that. And Baptists at least tend to get baptized after a confession of faith is made. So I had to really understand what was going on before I could do that. And then was baptized when we lived in Germany at the International Baptist Church there. And I remember the day I was supposed to be baptized in front of everyone, the church was snowed out, so I didn't get to do it. And I was devastated.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And then we ended up waiting until Christmas Eve. So I did it on a Christmas Eve service, which ended up being really special.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then I'd say, just having become a Christian at so young of an age, it comes with its own difficulties in maybe as not a teenager or adult that professes their faith, usually sometimes output of a difficult time or tricky living. It, at a young age just comes with a different handful of growing. And I felt that because I was raised by Christians and became a Christian very young, that actually becoming Christian is a really difficult decision
Yeah.
because it brings a lot of, um, trials in and of itself, and realizing that we are flawed and still trying to be a light in the midst of all of that kind of stuff. And I realized that as I grew up, and so anyway, all that to say, becoming a believer at a young age, to circumnavigate back to what I said about it not being as exciting, in a way is a different kind of exciting because of the time length that is attached to me. So
Yeah.
anyway.
Absolutely. Well, and I know from a lot of people that really grow up in the church, there's always that like moment where it becomes real to them. So it's like, most people have that, like, well, I wouldn't even say most people, some people have that story of like where you were talking about of, oh, they come to it later in life. So it's very definitive and everything. But then, a few of us, it's like, oh, well, this has always sort of been a part of my life. But then there's that moment, that it becomes real to you. I find it funny because I actually was baptized in a Baptist church when I was 12 years old. That was when I came to the faith. And then I was also not Methodist in high school. I went to a Presbyterian church. And then when I went to college, that's when the Methodists got me. That's when I started hanging out. So that's funny that you brought that up. But well, yeah. So that's your sort of faith journey. But obviously, you're a choral director and, well, now a doctor in music. So music's obviously played a huge part of your life. How did you first get into music? Has that always been a part of your life as well, or yeah?
Yeah, it has. In a similar way, my parents were also musicians, just like what we just talked about, in how
Yeah.
they kind of brought that to faith to me. They also brought music. So they met as military bandsmen. They're both brass players at the time, and they met kind of hating each other in the band, but then fell in love. And my dad decided to go to the Army School of Music to become a band master, which was the next step for that career path. And so I was born while he was at school to become a conductor. So he's a conductor as well.
Yeah.
And then they started me on piano at age 4. And my mom sat and practiced with me every single day until I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
And we joke about that as like our biggest trial and tribulation that we'll ever have to overcome, was spending that much time together. Because I got in trouble more at the piano bench than I did anywhere else in life. Just through the arguments and being stubborn, and my mom being impatient sometimes and me not wanting to be there. But in hindsight, I am so thankful for her sitting with me, because it wasn't until I started teaching piano as a college student that I noticed that younger kids just don't have the capacity to sit and practice and know how to approach learning something by themselves.
Yeah.
And I realized quickly on that I was not only teaching kids how to play the piano, but teaching adults how to teach their children.
Yeah.
So I'm so thankful for that. I will say that I hated piano until I was in high school. Those 10 or 12 years, I didn't enjoy practicing. It was a huge priority at home. I had to practice before I did my homework, before I played outside. And so it was always something that I didn't want to do. And it wasn't until high school that I realized that people were very impressed with what I could do. And then I was like, okay, well, maybe this is pretty cool. And I decided then that I was probably going to pursue music. I had played the clarinet in middle school and high school. And at the end of high school, I was trying to decide which one I wanted to study, because I was pretty torn. I had been an all-state player on clarinet, and I really liked that. But I also had my piano background, and I ended up choosing clarinet. So I started as a clarinet major in undergrad. Yeah. And did one year of study and realized that this was not the life that I wanted. I hated sitting there and practicing piano or playing clarinet. And all I wanted to do was record movie soundtracks. for clarinet, and I knew then that that would have involved me moving out to LA, and I didn't want to do that. So I just realized it was not the right call.
Yeah.
And then chose to switch to piano. And so I had to re-audition for the school on piano. And then I did a piano performance degree as a bachelor's student.
Yeah.
And then everything else evolved out of that too. I had a great choral choir experience at school, and I didn't get into the master's program for piano that I wanted to. And so I decided I wasn't going to do grad school. And during that year, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to try again for piano or switch over to conducting, which was something that I had sort of dabbled in undergrad. So I think most everyone at the church knows that I moved to Italy for a year after undergrad to work at a church there. And during that time is when I just had a whole year to decide what I wanted to do next, and decided I wanted to go for conducting, and then came back to USA and applied for master's programs, went and did a master's in conducting, and then came to Jacobs to do conducting. And now I don't play clarinet anymore. I still play piano a bit, not as much as I used to, but
Yeah.
it's just been a crazy evolution. And then the composing also fell into my lap too at some point, and
Yeah.
was lucky enough to be able to do a doctoral minor in that and have pieces published and stuff performed in it, all of that. So
Yeah.
that's the musical journey.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. It's funny that you brought up high school as well, because I remember a lot of my friends, because I was in choir and all that stuff, and all of them would always say, "I wish my parents had like started me on piano when I was younger." Even some of them that were like really good musicians, even at other things, like, man, I just feel like I'd be so much better if I knew how to play piano. And so, yeah, so
And it's
yeah,
the backbone for everything. I
it
mean, my brother wanted to play drum set, and they made him take piano for 6 years before
is.
they even let him start taking drum set lessons,
Oh yeah.
even though it's completely different, but it set him up for success.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. Yeah, it really is. It is the backbone of it all. But it sounds like your parents were really good at like laying a good foundation, in both in faith and in music. And so I think that's really cool. I commend them for that. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're still performing themselves too.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah. My dad is retired now, but he runs a bunch of volunteer music in Clarksville, Tennessee. When COVID's not a thing, he has a big concert band that is his own, and then a few big bands that play weddings and concerts. And he also hires out people for other events.
Mhm.
And then my mom, when she was about 20 years ago, she started learning the harp. And so she's been playing the harp now for 20 years or so. And the harp and the piano are in the same room at their house. And there's a lot of fighting that goes on with who gets the prime time.
That's awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah. So my last question that I had for you, once again, if you're joining us now, you can write a question if you want to for Sam. But the last question I had for you was, and you already touched on it a little bit, but what led you to St. Paul? Beyond just coming here for Jacobs and all that, but what sort of drew your eye to this community, I guess?
Well, I will say to start off, it was a job, and I knew the guy that had left, David McNeil. He was the precursor to me. He did the master's program at Jacobs that I came in to do a doctorate for, and so that was just replacement ease of transitioning in a different person. But I've found that I get a lot of, well, I learn a lot moving away from the academic setting to music making in the church. And that's, I think, what my biggest draw is the application of my abilities and how I'm able to use what I know to help other people develop their knowledge or their faith or their experience at church. And however that's embodied, I don't know if it's musical, if it's, like I said, knowledge based, if I'm helping someone sing better and therefore they can worship by themselves better when I'm not in front of them, or when they're not in the choir or something like that, then I feel like that's an accidental service that I'm able to give as well.
Yeah.
And I really like working with what we would call the aging choir, just in the volunteer chorus of the church, with especially people at St. Paul who have been singing for so long and would like to continue singing into their 80s. And it's so fun to navigate the physical limitations, the mental changes, and just all of the stuff that goes into what affects your mind and body as you continue to worship as you age. And I've always been drawn to being able to facilitate that kind of atmosphere and have a hand in it, and the contrast that it provides to school learning, and how this is all volunteer and no one's paid and everyone's there because they want to be. Like, it's just super special and super important, and I love that, and it's why I've stayed at St. Paul.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I have to say that I have really enjoyed, for the brief time that I have been here, getting to see your gifts. Like, there was a week where you did your own composition of the doxology, and I believe I went up to you afterwards and I said, that reminded me of if Journey tried to write the doxology, the piano lines and all that. So I really enjoyed it. I loved it. So yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, I don't see any questions from anyone, but I have to say that it has been nice to see your face, not behind a mask. So thanks for your time. Thanks for coming on and chatting with me.
Of course.
And, yeah, I really appreciate it. So, if you still have questions and you're watching this later, I can always send them to Sam and see what he says, and maybe I'll share some of his answers. Next week we're going to have John Whitcomb, who's our other worship leader, on here to have a similar conversation with us. So hope to see you guys then. But once again, thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for talking with me, Sam. I appreciate it.
You got it.
All right, I'll see you guys.